Playoff hockey comes early for us with the first ever, first of its kind OKC Conference Championship this week. What would it look like if some other conferences around the state followed suit and had conference tournaments of their own? We'll talk about that, plus updating the top 25 rankings. And how about an early preview of the 2025 MHSAA state playoffs? How about that? Good? Great. Hit that subscribe button and let's talk some hockey. I spent the weekend at the MIHL Showcase and got to watch a ton of great hockey. I got pretty good notes on more than I think 95 different kids. Shared some good conversations with coaches from around the state. Joel Brazil over on the west side, Ryan Ossenmacher here at Northville. Really good conversations with coaches, scouts as well in nearby regions. What was it, Northern Ontario, the GoJ, some good junior leagues represented as well at the showcase. Just an all-around solid weekend. The only problem is there's so much good hockey. It's basically impossible for one man to catch it all. So maybe the not frustrating part, but yeah, like I said, there's just so much good hockey going on, so many good games, a lot of excitement. I thought I encapsulated and was able to take it all in. But then talking with some people post MIHL showcase, I'm like, wow, I missed that. Oh, I missed that game. Oh, I missed the end of that game. I know I didn't catch that kid. So as much as I did see it, there was just as much that I didn't and happened to miss. So a couple big takeaways I think from the weekend. Houghton Flint Powers might have been the game of the showcase, at least in my opinion and what I saw. I also really enjoyed the Cranbrook Marquette game. Super. I'll get into it in a little bit, but just a chess match between two very well coached teams with a good amount of talent as well. And I got a story about this Trevor Vance kid out of Sparta. Vance is a senior goalie, big kid, super mobile, super athletic. Caught my attention immediately as I was watching Sparta. And I was pumping his tires a little bit on social media during the game against Grand Rapids Christian. Just like I said, impressed by his size and athleticism. That's a combination you don't see too often at this level. Well, come to find out, this kid started playing hockey 2 years ago. Like, what? I guess some of the boys from the team would they'd be out playing pond hockey or something like that. And Vance, just a friend of a friend, would come out and play goalie while the other, real hockey players would buzz around and shoot on him, right? They needed a bit of a moving shooter tutor, so to speak. So eventually they get impressed enough that they're like, man, you know what? You should come out for the hockey team. And then next thing you know, hockey team's got him working with a goalie coach. He's training all off season. Kid was second team all state last year and in line to probably do it again this year. Like, I just wanted to take a minute to appreciate this story. Like, this ain't football. This ain't some track star that the football coach convinced to come play running back for him. Or a 6'6" kid walking the hallways that the basketball coach, begged to be his big man on the basketball team. Hockey isn't a sport you just pick up and decide to play. So hats off to him. Nice job all around. Sparta wins both of their games at the showcase, and Vance stopping 48 of 51 shots faced between games against Lumen Christi and then Grand Rapids Christian, like I mentioned. So pretty cool story. Anyways, I caught that tidbit, wanted to share it. Too good not to tell on our platform here as we kind of highlight some of those cool stories within Michigan high school hockey. So I want to circle back real quick to the Houghton-Powers game for a minute. I was actually pretty impressed with the officials this weekend. I believe I had a conversation. I mentioned Coach Ossenmacher. Him and I were talking just how we felt like it had been a pretty good weekend for Stripes all around. But obviously, there's always a call or calls that stand out. But all in all, as an unbiased spectator, I was pretty pleased. There was one instance in the Houghton and Powers game, however, and by no means am I saying it dictated the outcome of the game. I think ultimately you got to deal with the hand you're dealt, so to speak, and don't leave decisions up to the refs either. Don't put it in the officials' hands. There was a bit of an instance at the end of the Houghton-Powers game. I don't think it necessarily tainted the way the game went. I think it kind of ended up adding to the storyline, but was Powers was up 3-2 late. What was it? I think Houghton was down 5-on-4, pulled their goalie to get to 5-on-5, something along those lines. Anyways, scores with the net empty to tie it at 3-3 with like under a minute to play. Huge moment. Huge, tons of excitement in the building. Play obviously ensues after the center ice face off. Puck is in Houghton's end, and there's probably 20, 25, 30 seconds left on the clock. And a Houghton player tries to eat it up against the wall, just pins it up against the boards and tries to let the clock run out. Now, me personally, it's a little too long. I don't think you can eat the puck up against the boards for, north of 10 seconds, north of 15 seconds, to be honest with you. And I think there was all of 20, 25 seconds on the clock. But nonetheless, smushes it up against the boards. The guy pins him to the boards. Ref is yelling, move it, move it, move it, pretty incessantly, right? To the point where I'm hearing it, where I'm watching. Finally, ref blows it dead, calls him for a delay game for pinning the puck up against the boards. Not a call you see every day. I realize that. But nonetheless, like I said, probably too much time on the clock to be doing what you were doing. Do I think that results in a penalty? No, not necessarily. And I did find it slightly ironic that the exact same officiating crew did the very next game. Exact same thing happened. Now it was in the first period, not in the waning moments of the third period. And what do? They blow it dead and they drop the puck for an ensuing faceoff. No penalties. So different, every referee is going to see the game different, and refs are very much going to see the game differently than we see it on each side of the bench there. But nonetheless, penalty gets called. There were some penalties prior to that because Powers was on a 4-on-3 man advantage with 7 seconds left coming out of that penalty. In zone faceoff. Houghton actually wins the faceoff clean. But because of that man advantage, Powers kid, I think it was Owen Perry, was able to get to that puck, lost the faceoff, but gets to the puck first in the corner, quickly centers it out in front. And I believe it was Aiden Cook camped out in front, right in front of the crease with his stick on the ice, and is able to tap it in for the game-winning goal with 2 seconds left on the clock. Like, hats off to Powers for being in that situation and to be able to tee up and generate even a scoring opportunity, let alone to finish the play. But like I said, you obviously feel for the Houghton boys there in a tough spot. You never want to see officiating kind of dictate or get involved with the outcome of the game there. But nonetheless, Powers with a fantastic sequence there. Never counted out. Could have packed it in, right? 3-3. You give up the game tying goal late. Kind of emotional moment there. Could have easily packed it in, played for the shootout, and flip a coin and see who wins. But hey, they kept coming. Got an opportunity, and then they made good on that opportunity. So, like I said, you never want to leave it in the ref's hands. It was definitely a bummer for one side, and obviously a triumph for the other. But as a in the middle, unbiased spectator, there, it was a super exciting game, wire to wire. And I'm pretty sure I don't know. I think I just you watch so many games in such a short amount of time, you forget who, what, when, where. But that was one I pretty much just posted up and watched that game almost in its entirety, despite some of the other games going around. But okay, so I'll put a bow on that for the MIHL Showcase. I wanted to get into maybe the meat and potatoes of this episode with the OK Conference Conference Tournament going on this week. The first round, I guess the first round technically was, I think, last Friday or last Saturday. I heard some of the coaches talking about it. There was like a play-in game to get to the first round of the playoffs, which was yesterday. And so the first round of the first of its kind OKC Conference Tournament. We'll do a little bit of bracketology here, but first round of the tournament was Tuesday night, so yesterday. So not a ton for me to dive into. But let me see if I can split screen here. Here we go. It's going to populate for me. There we go. So this is what the bracket looks like currently as we stand here on Wednesday morning. A couple score updates for you. East Grand Rapids, I believe technically the top seed overall, uh, eked out a 3-2 overtime win over Jenison to avoid a pretty monumental upset there. Had the Wildcats pulled it off. James Albers, I believe, scored the overtime winner there to advance the Pioneers onto the semifinals of the conference tournament. Who was it here? Next up, Caledonia handled Mona Shores pretty good. I think that was a 4-0 final. Another overtime thriller here. Granville and Forest Hill Central. Granville able to escape potential upset there as well with a 2-1 win in overtime last night. And then Byron Center with a real strong performance over Reith's Puffer. That gives you your final four here in the OK Conference Tournament. Let's get into some predictions for the remaining 3 games here. What order do I go in here? Whoops. Well, that wasn't how I wanted the animation to work for those of you watching on YouTube, but that's okay. Nonetheless, you see the result here. First semifinal up here. Wow, lost my place with my notes. Where am I at? Okay, here we go. Battle of the Bulldogs between Granville and Byron Center. These two OKC teams have not met yet this season, so this is a first. I liked what I saw from Granville at the MIHL Showcase over the weekend. I was expecting a team of like high skill, fancy dekes, pretty plays, tic-tac-toe goals. But what I saw was a bunch of like work hards, and that's not a bad thing. The pretty plays are there, and they have guys capable of playing at a high level, like Bennett Eisma and Landon Smith. But this team's identity, I think, is kind of steeped in just going to work and working hard in the corners and doing the gritty things and being heavy on pucks and things like that. But BC was pretty stellar at the MIHL Showcase as well. And if you look at their record since the new year, they're 7-2-2 since January 1st, riding a bit of a wave of momentum throughout this tournament. That carried them through the MIHL Showcase. I think that trend has continued here into the OK tournament. So Granville, I could see them kind of jumping out to an early lead in this one, but I'm going to take, like I said, I'm going to take BC to climb back into this one and pull out a bit of a slight upset, I would say, here in the conference tournament. In the other semifinal, let me see if I did this right. Yeah, okay, here we go. Well, the graphic was wrong, but nonetheless, this will work. That first round overtime scare to Jenison, maybe a team Jenison being a team I think most would expect EGR to otherwise dominate. But, you get this playoff atmosphere, do or die type of environment. And teams can play up and teams can play a little scared as well. So I think this close call could galvanize this bunch for EGR, much like, if you remember, East narrowly escaped an upset in triple overtime against Big Rapids in last season's state playoffs. I think this can serve as a bit of a wake-up call, and the Pioneers could come back strong and confident in the semifinals to beat a really tough Caledonia squad. But it wouldn't surprise me one bit either to see the Scots keep this game close and keep the pressure on there for East. But I'm going to take the Pioneers to prevail. And stop me if you've heard this before, but EGR and Byron Center are the two best teams in West Michigan, based on how this bracket currently unfolds. But let's be honest, like beginning of the season, I don't know how many of us thought we'd be here in this position with East and Byron Center at the top of the conference. An OKC Conference Championship game here between these two, I think would still be a bit of a stunner, a bit of a surprise, despite these two programs' track records in recent memory. BC has been white hot lately. You just heard me talk about them, but this is East's championship to lose. Give me the Pioneers to claim the first ever OKC Conference Tournament championship. How about that? Okay, that was fun. Timing of the podcast, maybe not ideal. Maybe I need to bump these earlier in the week and maybe go Monday, Tuesday or something so I can kind of preview those first round matchups. So mental notes for next year. I guess we'll look at it that way. But that was fun. I heard some of the coaches talking about it last weekend too, up top at the showcase. They seemed super excited about it. It's obviously unique, obviously kind of imitating the college hockey's format to an extent. To my knowledge, hasn't been done in Michigan high school hockey. I don't know how practical it is for other conferences and leagues around the state to kind of implement something similar. But I did have some fun with it a little bit as I was putting graphics together last night. Maybe, and they may not entirely make sense. It might not be a perfect one-to-one of what a conference tournament would look like in some other conferences, but I wanted to have some fun with it a little bit. Let's see if I can do this. How about the Great Lakes? How about the Great Lakes and the UP? What a conference tournament might look for them. Whoops. Am I still on the rails here? Yeah, I'm good. I tugged on my earpiece here and scared me. 7 teams in the Great Lakes Conference here. Some intriguing matchups, and if you look at Jeffers as the number 1 seed, Marquette, Calumet, Escanaba, Hancock. There's a bunch of teams in here that could kind of survive and advance and make a sweet run here through a conference tournament. Now, the problem you'll see, again, these conferences already have their current structures and formats in place. I'm going to get into a couple others here, but some of these teams already play 2, 3, in some instances 4 times in a single season to then add another matchup on top, a potential matchup with a conference championship. Maybe not entirely practical. I think for some of these other conferences to do it, you'd obviously have to kind of restructure your regular season format. But okay, how about the KLAA? We all love the KLAA, right? One of the best conferences in Michigan high school hockey. And now this, I struggled with a little bit. I was basing this off of records and rankings on the Michigan High School Hockey Hub. But again, some intriguing matchups, right? Could you get a all Livonia matchup there in the first round? Maybe Novi pulls off a win and draws a big matchup there with Stevenson on one half of the bracket. Salem playing really hot hockey right now. Salem and Brighton, that's a fun matchup. Could we see Brighton and Heartland for a second, third time this season? That's a pair of teams that play a bunch throughout the regular season. They play as one of their KLAA games. They both play in the Thanksgiving tournament over the holiday break. So there's potential. I think there's been years where Brighton and Heartland have played 3 times in a single season. You wouldn't want to necessarily add another potential matchup with a playoff format like this. But like I said, if you're going to implement this, you would then make changes throughout the remainder of your schedule. I believe the current format with like the KLAA right now, they play everybody in conference once, and then there's a crossover game from the East Division and the West Division. You play a crossover game. I think you have like a ranking game in there too as well. So if you did implement this format, you'd obviously have to make changes to some of those crossover games and things like that. But nonetheless, it kind of exciting, gets you in the playoff mood, the playoff mentality, playing for a conference championship well before the state tournament starts. So one more here for you. Why not the OAA here, which, Clarkston has dominated this conference for much of the last couple seasons and has dominated yet again this season. And with a tournament format like this, could potentially continue to demonstrate its dominance in the conference. And this is not a one-to-one. OAA folks, don't get too mad at me here. I know the red and the white division, I believe, is a bit of a tiered system, with the red division being the top tier and the white division being the bottom tier. So these rankings wouldn't be perfect here, but nonetheless, still some intriguing matchups. You could get Stony Creek and Rochester United for another time there in a high stakes environment where win you go on, lose you go home, so to speak. So I don't know, just some intriguing matchups, some food for thought here. Because like I said, I think the OKC kind of is getting the juices flowing a little bit here with some early playoff hockey. Getting into a conference tournament format there. So let me see here. I got a couple of chats here. This is a little unusual. We don't get too many chats here. What do I got here? Uh, I think a goal. Godwin. Godwin. I don't know who Godwin is, but we talking Gladwin? Maybe Gladwin will tear everybody up. I'm not sure about that. Let's see here. Notifications are on. Gotta love that, buddy. Appreciate that. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, be sure to subscribe, rate and review as well. That definitely helps. And if you're watching here on YouTube and you're checking out some of these uh, hypothetical conference tournament brackets on YouTube, be sure to obviously like and subscribe here as well. Hey, Petey. Hey, Chris. Let's see. We'll keep it moving here. What else did I have next on the docket? Why don't we update the rankings? I have a link in the description. I still need to update it on the website. But in the meantime, we can update it here on the podcast. And then by the time I get to post-production, I'll have that updated on the website for everybody. But nonetheless, we'll update it here if my computer cooperates. There we go. Cool. I'll jump back into a bit of a split screen here. We'll bring up the top 25 rankings. And we'll get into it here. I'm not going to go through every single team. I've done that in the past, and there's just not a ton of movement. So I'm going to highlight maybe some of the more notable moves within the rankings, maybe some teams that have been hot lately. We'll kind of do it that way instead. So right out of the gate, if this cooperates, there we go. Salem back in the rankings after a 6-week hiatus. Had them in the top 25 early on this season. They unfortunately kind of played their way out of it, but good news for them. They've, winners of 5 of their last 6. They've now played their way back into the rankings. 2 wins at the MIHL Showcase. Throttled previously ranked Novi 10-4 a couple weeks back. They also beat a ranked Brighton team. Played a highly ranked Brother Rice team, super competitive in a 4-2 loss. So I got Salem here at 25. Another newcomer to the top 25, I got Mattawan with a number next to their name for the first time this season. They're undefeated in SCHL action, and that's a tough league to win in. That alone says a lot about this bunch. That conference, I was doing research in the preseason leading up to it. That was the lowest scoring league in the state last season. Offense is hard to come by in that league with some stout coaches that know the game, can coach guys up, get them to play a certain way. Offense, tough to come by in the SCHL. But Mattawan had a 16-game unbeaten streak snapped yesterday, actually, in a 6-5 loss at the hands of another top-ranked Livonia Stevenson bunch. And how about leading scorer Braden Lewis with a point in all but 1 game since joining the team back in mid-December? He's definitely one you're going to want to circle to watch there. One more newcomer to the rankings here. Lakes area, well-deserved here in the rankings for the first time. They had won 8 in a row and 10 of 11 before falling to Eisenhower over the weekend. The schedule hadn't exactly been a tall task, but the most recent stretch, you're looking at a 2-1 win over a good Chip Valley squad, 3-2 win over a ranked Sault Ste. Marie team, 4-2 win over a highly ranked Jeffers bunch, and then a 4-1 win over a really tough Hancock team that I got to see over the weekend as well. I think Lakes Area United is legit. You've heard me talk about a couple of their offensive weapons up front, obviously Jacob Van Sweden in net. But we really got to do something about these unis, boys. If you need some help, let me know. They look like they're designed by Dwight Schrute from The Office. Like, it is your birthday. It's very, very straightforward, very to the point. It almost looks like you need a period on that jersey where it just said, Lakes Area. So anyways, boys, we might need to do a little revamping of the jerseys there in the off season. So you guys come back looking fresh there in 25, 26. So anyways, all right, we'll keep moving along here. Just having a little fun with you boys there. Obviously well-deserved with a ranking next to the name, and excited to see kind of what lies ahead as we get closer to playoffs. Sault Ste. Marie, 22. Alpena, 21. Caledonia at 20. Gabriel Richard climbs all the way up to 19 for me. Really hitting their stride and hitting it at the right time, I think. I thought they looked good at the MIHL Showcase. I believe they went 1-1. But don't let the overall record fool you. I think this team is a huge threat in Division Three, and we're going to talk playoff hockey here in a little bit later on. Let's see here: Granville 18, Brighton 17. We'll go with one more Bulldog. That's 3 Bulldogs in a row. We got Byron Center at 16, Marquette 15, and then let me stop here for a minute. Jeffers at 14. They just keep climbing my rankings and all the other rankings out there that I've seen. They just keep climbing up the charts, and rightfully so. This isn't just a one-line team, guys. Like Britt Heinonen and Cody Turner on one line. You follow that up closely behind with Brogan Turner and Bennett Rahala on a second line. 1A, 1B type situation. You hear me talk about it all the time too. Just about everyone in the state can put together a top line that can generally compete and get up and down the ice with just about anybody. The ones that make playoff runs have 2, 3, in CC's case, 4 lines, right? Where you can just roll them out the door and not miss a beat there. Jeffers has enough depth to make a run out of what I believe to be the toughest region in the MHSAA playoffs to win, regardless of division there. So very intriguing. The more I obviously get to watch Jeffers and picking up on teams and tendencies and things like that. The Jets, no doubt, one to watch here come playoff time. Let's see here. There we go. De La Salle, Brother Rice. I did want to stop here for a minute as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel like anybody's been talking about Rice this season. It's been a very under the radar Warriors team. They started the season 3-6-1 in their first 10. Maybe a little banged up, maybe not full strength early in the season. They've now won 9 of their last 11 games, including a huge 3-2 win over a top-ranked Howell team. We're going to talk playoffs in a moment, like I said, so more on these guys in a bit. But Brother Rice is trending in the right direction at the right time and just completely flying under the radar. It's like everybody else is talking about other teams. Maybe that's the way they want it. And I'm kind of uncovering the lid here a little bit, so to speak. But nonetheless, Brother Rice here, one to watch at 12. Trenton at 11, Cranbrook at 10. I got Stevenson at 9, Clarkston all the way up to 8 now. In a similar boat as Rice, I think games are just starting to go their way now. After kind of being snake bit in the first half of the season, games just weren't going their way. They're losing coin flips, essentially. A couple overtime losses, a couple shootout losses. This is a bunch that's got talent, and they're deep. They play the game the right way. They're hard on pucks, tough on the forecheck, disciplined in the D zone. Trey Damien was electric over the weekend, I thought. Kyle Lynch had a good showing as well. But who I really liked, though, when I was talking with Coach about this was junior D-man Ryan Wilford. Just totally, obviously, you got your go-to guys. And Damien and some of those guys have been the attention grabbers, the headline grabbers there from pundits like myself. But nonetheless, Ryan Wilford, I was super excited about this kid's future. The way he plays, his footwork, his puck skills. He's got a bright future, and I'm very intrigued to watch him in the coming months as he kind of steps into a larger role there with the program in the next couple months. Okay, let me fly through a couple of these real quick. East Grand Rapids at 7, Houghton at 6, Orchard Lake at 5. Powers, to me, I got Powers at 4, which I think is the highest I've had them all season so far. I was really impressed by this group over the weekend. They play fast, man. They play with great pace. Aiden Cook is off the charts talented. Had a hat trick, I believe, in that game against Houghton. Owen Perry is incredible, too. For a freshman, he's not built like a freshman. He doesn't skate like a freshman. He doesn't think like a freshman. He is a very smart and talented hockey player. This group as a whole just snaps the puck around pretty good, too. A lot of clean hockey plays, neutral zone regroups, zone entries, things like that. This is a very dangerous bunch. And especially when you add them to the Division II equation, that playoff picture gets awfully messy. Okay, We'll keep moving here. Howell at 3. As good as I felt about Powers this weekend, I felt just the same about Howell in Division One. So many playmakers, so disciplined, yet so creative at the same time. That is a combination of balance that you just don't see very often, where it's a well coached bunch that can execute on the X's and O's, but still has that creative freedom to attack the net in different ways, get different guys involved with scissor plays, drop passes, seam passes through the crease there, and things like that. A very creative bunch for Howell as well. And then 2 and 1 here, no surprises. Heartland, Catholic Central. That's been the case basically wire to wire this season. So there's your top 25 as we stand here on what's today, February 5th. There we go. I'm going to update the rankings, I think, one more time before playoffs, and then we'll shut down the top 25 because after that, the only thing that really matters is survive and advance come playoff time. So, okay, so there's my top 25. Why don't I'll do a little playoff preview here. How do I want to do this? I guess I'll leave the rankings up just so we can kind of look at some of these teams that we're talking about and where they're ranked and things like that. You don't want to look at my ugly mug anyway, so I'll just keep it this way. Looking at playoffs brackets are set to be finalized on February 9th, which I believe is Sunday. It's the end of this week. Looking at regional assignments, I've kind of assembled a bit of a short list of teams that have a legitimate path to Plymouth, regardless of the seedings and rankings, or the seedings and placements at the regional level. I just spent some time here on Division One for a minute. Catholic Central is the runaway favorite, in my opinion. I think there's 2 teams that can legitimately contend with Catholic Central, one of them being in their region in number 2, Heartland here. That game may be the game of the season right there, if and when these 2 teams meet for the regional championship there, which I believe is in Heartland. That building is not big enough for the stage for this, is not a big enough stage for the impact or the importance, significance of this game. But nonetheless, it'll be jam-packed, wall-to-wall with people. Should be a fun one to watch there for sure, and could potentially determine your Division One state champion and do it at the regional level, which is unfortunate. But a couple of other teams here that I think could really make a run. You heard me talk about Howell. Howell looked good enough over the weekend that they could contend and compete with whoever comes out of that region. Now, I don't think that matchup would happen based on MPR for Catholic Central to play Howell or for Heartland to play Howell. I don't think would happen until the state finals. But nonetheless, Howell definitely showed as a significant roadblock for whoever comes out of that Catholic Central Heartland region. So I think those 3 right there, your state champion is in that group of 3, one way or another. Some other teams that I think could put a scare into, or that could definitely contend, Clarkston, obviously, super highly ranked, turning things on at the right time. Cap City could put a scare into Howell at the regional level as well. Caps looked good over the weekend. Very impressed by the way they played, the structure of the discipline. And they're big, surprisingly big. I did not expect, they've got good size on the blue line. They've got some forwards up front that like to throw their weight around. Caps could potentially pull a bit of an upset there at the regional level with Howell if the Highlanders get caught sleeping there. Mona Shores, Sparta, Forest Hill Central. I'm still not counting out my Rangers. Games haven't been going their way lately, but I still think they absolutely factor into the regional playoff picture. And if they can survive that region, could absolutely contend with teams like, I think Sparta and Mona Shores are in the opposite region. I only looked at this from a quarterfinal perspective. I didn't look at it from a regional level. But your last quarter here that I haven't touched on, all KLAA to me. Brighton, Northville, Novi, Salem, Plymouth. Those last 2 teams, Salem and Plymouth, Plymouth beat Salem, but both of them are looking super good right now. Plymouth beat a really tough and talented Calumet team over the weekend. Salem's top guys are starting to click and really starting to figure it out and find a good rhythm there. Novi started out hot. It's kind of cooled off lately a little bit. Northville may have the 2 best defensemen in the state and Isaac Nelson and Alex McCollum. And then you got Brighton, obviously, who you can never count out. Uh, More offensive talent, I think, than some of the others I had just mentioned in this quarter. And obviously, never going to count out a Kirk Cavisto coached bunch. So Brighton could still very well, even despite having a bit of a quote unquote down year. I don't look at it that way. I think they're still a very talented bunch, obviously, still in my top 20, and have been throughout the season. A young bunch, a growing bunch, still very much in the playoff picture here. Okay, let me shift into Division Two, and I'll get into some of my favorites here. At the beginning of the season, it felt like a two-horse race between Powers and Stevenson. Stevenson reeling a little bit. They've lost a couple games in a row. I know they just beat Madawan last night to kind of get back in the win column. But I have concerns. I have some concerns there, which I don't have about a bunch like Flint Powers. Feel super confident about Powers after what I saw this weekend. So, in my opinion, front runner here in Division Two, but it's not going to be an easy road. You've got Marquette that'll factor in, Byron Center that'll factor in. What about Calumet? Or not Calumet, excuse me, Caledonia, Granville. That West quarter in Division Two is going to be tough. And one of those three teams, Byron Center, Caledonia, Granville, who we just talked about in the OKC Conference Tournament, all three of those teams could get to Plymouth with a really strong case at bringing home some hardware. All three of those teams talented in a variety of ways. Like, heard me mention Granville, grit and hard work, lunch pail mentality. Caledonia has a ton of talent. That top line is super talented with Kaufman, Simon, Harmon Esch, a ton of guys to like there. Hogan Net is stellar too. So that West quarter of the bracket is absolutely going to factor into the state championship picture there. Marquette has to go all the way to, I think, Midland or Saginaw for regionals. That's the first time in a long time, I think. Marquette being, I think, the only UP team in Division Two. A long road trip for regionals there. So nonetheless, I think they will factor into the playoff picture as well. Could set the stage, I think, for Flint Powers and Marquette in the quarterfinals as a potential matchup. And that would be a very nail-biting matchup there for both sides. Powers with a ton of skill, Marquette, just that in-your-face style of play that's tough for opponents. You know who I won't count out either in this quarterfinal is Lakeland and Midland Dow as well. Those are two teams. I haven't talked about them a ton this season, but I know there's enough talent there that they can still put a scare into. They could pull an upset over a team like Marquette, or even hang with Powers late, push them to overtime or something like that, and then you don't know how it might unfold from there. Stevenson, to me, as games haven't been going their way lately, I still think the Spartans should be the ones to come out of that quarterfinal region, I'll call it there. I got to rephrase that. The two regions that combine to make one quarter of the bracket. So Stevenson should absolutely survive the region, and then I'd also see them advancing past the quarterfinals as well. I don't want to say a lock to get to the semifinals, but it'd be hard for me to not at least put them that far in my bracket initially right now. And then the last quarter here, Brother Rice. If I'm a D2 team, I would be very scared of Brother Rice right now because nobody's talking about them. They're white hot. They're starting to play really well at the right time. Trenton is going to have to go through Rice. You get to the quarterfinal, Stevenson may have to go through Rice to get to a state final. You get to a state final, the last team I want to be standing across from is Brother Rice, just because of the success they've had in recent memory. I don't necessarily know that they have more talent than some of these other teams. They just have that boogeyman characteristic about them that if they get to the state semifinals, if they get to the state finals, man, that's the last program I want to be lined up across from, just because of their track record at that level of the tournament. So, okay, let me get into Division III here a little bit. A lot of favorites. D3 is going to be the hardest one to predict of the bunch. Houghton, East Grand Rapids, Orchard Lake, Cranbrook, Gabriel Richard. Jeffers, Alpena, De La Salle, Sault Ste. Marie. Like, D3 is wide open to me. And as wide open as it is, you're still not going to shake the usual suspects. You heard me mention EGR and Cranbrook. Both of them were in the D3 final last year. I think both of them absolutely still factor in to the D3 playoff picture this year. The road to a championship may still go through both of those teams. I've been pounding the table all season long. I think this Cranbrook team is better talent-wise than they were last season. And they're still playing structured hockey. They're still playing organized, disciplined, playing as a unit. That game against Marquette was in their face, on top of them with that forecheck. Ton of pressure. And Cranbrook just continued to weather the storm, wasn't faced, took it on the chin, bided their time, got timely scoring opportunities, and then capitalized on it and was able to neutralize a super talented Sentinels offense and shut them out with a 2-0 win. So that win alone says a lot about this Cranbrook bunch. They are absolutely very much a real threat to win Division III. East Grand Rapids, same thing. That top line is dangerous. Albers, Brady Ross is heating up. He's lighting the lamp lately too. If he gets going, that's a dangerous trio there for EGR up front. A young bunch, but an experienced group there for East that's seen and done a lot this season. So they're going to be ready for a deep playoff run. Orchard Lake, St. Lake, Orchard Lake, Gabriel Richard, De La Salle. Grand Rapids Christian, I think, could kind of sneak into the playoff picture as well if an EGR kind of has an off night or gets caught napping, something like that. Grand Rapids Christian showed me enough with that top line and with Braden Mellon in that over the weekend that I think Christian could compete and muddy the waters there in that quarter of Division III. Jeffers, you heard me talk about them. Jeffers, Houghton, Calumet, Hancock, those 4 teams, that makes up the toughest region of all playoffs this season, regardless of division, because all 4 teams have a legitimate shot at winning that region. I think Houghton right now is technically the number 1 seed based on MPR, Jeffers 2, and then I get Calumet. And I did it again. Am I still up and running here? God, I hope so. I hear myself talk. There we go. All right, I got to do something about this. I got to go wireless or something. It's 2025, PD. Get it together. But that region in particular, all 4 teams have a legitimate shot at winning that region. I want to say Jeffers, as I was doing some research, is 3-1 against teams within that region. Then they've beaten all 3 teams in that region. That doesn't necessarily equate to playoff success, obviously, because you get in those situations, survive in advance, do or die, and crazy things happen. So Jeffers, I think, is deeper than I thought initially at the beginning of the year, and that makes them a legitimate threat there in Division III. Whoever comes out of that region is going to be very scary, but they're also going to have to weather the storm and go through a big and tough Sault Ste. Marie team. That was my big takeaway on them from the MIHL Showcase. They got a lot of beef in that lineup, a lot of big boys for the Blue Devils. So that quarterfinal matchup, whoever survives the region of death there on the western side of the UP to then travel and take on Sault Ste. Marie on the east side of the UP before coming downstate, that quarterfinal is going to be a tough one this year, I think. You know what, too? Bay Reps and Alpena, it's going to be one of those 2 teams coming out of that northern Michigan quarter of the bracket as well. Bay Reps, a bit of a down year, I'd say. I guess it's just a young bunch. But nonetheless, that's a team that made it to the Final Four last season with a legitimate chance to make it back to the Final Four this year. Great goaltending, a young bunch up front, but just talented enough to defend well, keep them close, keep games close. I right now have them as a favorite to win their region. And then if they get to a quarterfinal matchup with Alpena, why couldn't the Reps steal a game and get back to Plymouth for a 2nd year in a row there? Why not? So I'm not counting out the Reps yet either in Division III. So anyways, a lot of names here in Division III that I think all kind of factor in to the playoff picture. D3, the most wide open of all 3 divisions. So let me bring me back to center here. Okay. That was a lot, some exciting stuff. We're starting to get into playoff hockey, playoff conversations, especially with the OKC Conference Championship talks this week. I'll be following that closely, check in on those games as the tournament unfolds throughout this week. But then next week, I think will be really heavy playoff talk, playoff content. I mentioned the MHSAA. I believe the brackets are supposed to be finalized by the end of the weekend. That'll give us a lot to talk about next week. Maybe do some way too early bracketology and picks and predictions and things like that. So, all right, a lot of hockey talk. Oh man, if you made it this far, be sure to subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, subscribe there as well. Rate and review the podcast. It does a lot for me. It's greatly appreciated. So, all right. Till next time, skate hard, have fun, see ya.